Hello and welcome back to another installment of Getting to Know You. I'm joined today by Dr. Yvonne Chiu. She's the Associate Professor of Dermatology and Pediatrics at the Medical College of Wisconsin. She's been a part of PeDRA from close to the beginning and has served on several PeDRA committees throughout the years. She's currently co-chairing the Meetings Committee for PeDRA, and she founded the Connective Tissue Disease Workgroup for PeDRA. Thanks so much for all the work you do for us, Dr. Chiu, and thanks for being here on Getting to Know You today. As we get started, could you tell everybody how you came to pediatric dermatology and what your career path has looked like so far?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Jen. It was a really kind introduction, and I'm really honored to be interviewed by you. I came to pediatric dermatology through my interest in pediatrics, actually. As a medical student, I always envisioned a career in pediatrics, and I always thought that I would do some sort of subspecialty fellowship. And I did a dermatology rotation near the end of my third year of medical school, and then realized that pediatric dermatology existed as a field, because before that I never even knew about it, and switched gears, decided to apply to dermatology, and then ultimately continue to pursue pediatric dermatology. And I don't regret that decision for anything.
That's awesome. I love that everybody who comes to pediatric dermatology seems to have this moment in their studies at some point in medical school where they go, this is exactly what I've been looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an amazing field, and if more people were exposed to it, they probably would love it just as much as we do.
I think so too. So can you talk a little bit more about the Connective Tissue Disease Workgroup and how that came to be and what your work within that group has looked like?
Yeah, so about 8 to 10 years ago, when I finished fellowship and was thinking about developing a niche for myself and what I was interested in, there were actually very few people in the country and across actually pediatric dermatology who were interested in studying the cutaneous manifestations of connective tissue disease. And so I distinctly remember going up to Heather Brandling Bennett at an SPD meeting and saying something to her like, I heard you're interested in connective tissue disease too, because I am, and I've never found anyone else who's interested in it.
Mhm.
And so early on, it did take a little bit of grassroots efforts to find like-minded people and find those of us who were interested in studying connective tissue disease and sort of advocate for it being part of PeDRA. Initially, we were amongst the inflammatory diseases work group, but now as the momentum has built over the years and there have been more of us involved and more research studies being done, I'm glad to say that we now have our own focused study group.
That's amazing. I love that you went up to just another person, within pediatric dermatology and we're like, hey, can we do this? Like, let's do this. I think that's just really at the heart of who PeDRA is. It's just people coming together and asking questions and getting others excited about the same thing. And it's really cool to see that in action.
For sure. I mean, I think pediatric dermatologists in general, we're very approachable and friendly people, and we're very collaborative. And I think that is something that's always worked in our favor and worked in the favor of PeDRA.
Why do you think the field of pediatric dermatology is so collaborative?
Ooh, I think that's a really good question. I never had the good fortune of working with Dr. Nancy Esterly, but many of my mentors trained directly with her. And I hear over and over again that she and many of the founding members of the field of pediatric dermatology were instrumental for creating that collaborative atmosphere, for admitting when you don't know something and when you need someone else's help, and for recognizing that sort of the collective brain is stronger and better than just one. And so while I personally never experienced that, I think hearing so many people speak of Dr. Esterly in that way has convinced me that she was very important in creating the atmosphere that's so unique to pediatric dermatology.
I love that you brought up Dr. Esterly. It's so exciting for me to hear those stories about her and how she really did open the doors and make this such a collaborative field. That's a really great way of putting it.
She was a truly remarkable woman. I'm just really sad that I never got to meet her.
I know everybody, like I was talking to Dr. Frieden a while ago, and she had mentioned that Dr. Esterly had been her biggest champion and her biggest mentor. And I think, with the people like Dr. Esterly and Dr. Frieden, this idea of mentorship has really been a really staple, a foundation of our particular group of people. And I feel that way really about pediatric dermatology across the board. And what is your experience with mentorship, and how do you view it?
Oh, that's another great question. I think mentorship is so important to us in pediatric dermatology. And I think, again, it speaks to how collaborative our field is. I've been extremely fortunate throughout my career to have strong mentors. Dr. Beth Drolet has perhaps been my biggest champion, but honestly, all of the colleagues and faculty at the Medical College of Wisconsin, where I trained, have been instrumental in launching my career. As a residency program director now, I see how important mentorship is, and I hope to be paying it forward with some of the trainees and more junior faculty members that I interact with now.
Absolutely. Dr. Chiu, how have you seen research change now that PeDRA has come into being and has really been established now for, gosh, of 9 years now? It's shocking.
I think it's really revolutionized pediatric dermatology research. I spoke to when I first started training and being interested in connective tissue disease, there really was no opportunity to do collaborative research at that time in the field that I was interested in. There were investigators who were organized around hemangioma research, and I think a few other areas of interest, but having PeDRA, having that infrastructure, having the support in the formal sort of organization has really made it much easier for junior people who are coming out to find areas of interest and to join study groups. I think it's also made it much more sustainable for those of us who are doing research to be buoyed up by other people who are interested in doing the same things that we are and give us that enthusiasm and that little sort of butt kick to keep going.
Yeah, well, that's exciting to hear that you feel like it's accelerated research. I certainly feel that way, but I'm not a researcher, so it's always nice to hear that message reinforced by our actual investigators. So you talk about finding a niche and how you found your niche in connective tissue disease. Do you have advice to our early investigators about how they might go about finding their niche?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question, and there's a million different ways to go about it. I think, it's sometimes very natural to go with the niche that your mentors or your training institution kind of specializes in or is strong in. And I think that's certainly one approach, to start doing some studies with a more senior faculty member and then eventually develop your own interest within that and branch out a little bit. I think also, though, if you truly have a passion or an interest in a field and you don't necessarily have mentors ready at your institution, I think you can also go outside of your institution and seek mentorship. I think PeDRA and the SPD have been very helpful in helping junior faculty connect with more senior faculty members and get advice and get help in launching research careers in areas that the junior faculty member is interested in. And I think another approach that was rather successful for me was to perhaps study a different disease area than what my mentor, Dr. Drolet, was doing, but also to use her expertise and experience with things like genetic investigations and apply that to my own disease. And so tapping into her knowledge base and using her techniques of research, but applying it to my niche. So a lot of different ways about going about it. And I think whatever it is that you're passionate about, I think it's amazing that we have that ability to do that research and that PeDRA is there to support you.
I love that you recommend tapping into the skill set of your mentor, even if it's not within your disease area of focus, because there's still a lot of wisdom there and there's so much to be learned. And just because you're not studying the same things doesn't mean that you can't absorb that.
Exactly. And to find, I think it's also important to have multiple different mentors. I count Dr. Elena Pope as one of my main mentors, and I hope she doesn't mind that I say that. But it was because as a fellow, I knew she had an interest in morphia, and so I sought her out when I was a fellow and did research and spent some time with her. And so therefore was able to piece together several mentors early in my career who could fill different gaps in what I needed.
I think that's a really perfect piece of wisdom. Piece together mentors that can fill the gaps that you are facing. That's terrific. Before I let you go, Dr. Chiu, is there one thing you could share with the network that is personal, like a hobby or a hidden talent? What's your secret?
Okay, I have probably two that I will share.
Okay.
One is that I love planning parties. I'm a little sad during the COVID era because there are really no social events to plan anymore. But if I couldn't be a pediatric dermatologist, I think I'd be a wedding planner. That's always been a sort of secret dream of mine. And
Okay.
then my other second talent is that I am a master Googler. So tell me whatever it is that you want to find out, and I can Google and go down multiple pathways to find you the information that you need.
That is a serious talent. I am not a good Googler at all. So I am in awe of those who have that talent and that skill.
Yeah, it's a pretty odd one, but it served me at times in my career.
Yeah, I bet. That's amazing. And I can totally picture you as a wedding planner. That
Great.
would be a fun job. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Chiu. It has been really wonderful getting to know you and hear about your career. It's been a true pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen. I've been a huge supporter of PeDRA's from the beginning, just as much as they've supported me in my career. And I'm honored that you guys wanted to get to know me better.
Well, we appreciate all that you do for PeDRA, all that you have done, and all the hard work you continue to do. So thank you, Dr. Chiu.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks for tuning in to today's Getting to Know You with Dr. Yvonne Chiu. Stay tuned for future episodes as we get to know more of our PeDRA network. You can find PeDRA at www.pedraresearch.org. You can find us on Twitter at PeDRA Research. We're also on Facebook at PeDRA Research. And you can find our podcasts anywhere you get your podcasts, iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Spotify.